Hi guys, Brittany here from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and today we are doing a deep clean of my garden system. I have neglected it a little bit. I'll show you guys some close-up pictures in a second here of what the inside of it looks like. Usually you do not have to completely take your garden apart to clean it between refilling it with new Y cubes, but I wanted to do it because of, again, a little bit of neglect and also because I had some pest issues. So I want to make sure that even though it's empty, everything is completely sanitized and clean before I put it back together and redo another round of Y cubes. So when your Kelby assistant tells you to take out your Y cubes and trim the roots, I definitely recommend listening because I really didn't, or I just forgot and checked off the tasks. So you can see here, I have a ton of cleanup to do. Now, another thing that my Kelby reminded me of that I ignored was making sure your areas that you are not growing in are covered so you don't get algae growth, because algae growth is super hard to clean off and I didn't do that either. So I've got a lot of cleanup to do here on this garden. Now, I already disassembled some of the top pieces, but one of the pieces I had the hardest time figuring out how to get off was the light bars. So I already took the other one off. There's a little like plastic thing right here that I pushed into and then just gently lifted the light bar up, and it comes off pretty easily, so we can set it aside. So now that the light bars are removed, I am going to start figuring out how to take these columns apart. So I'm going to lay out a towel because I don't know how much water is in each of these little compartments. And to be totally honest with you, I don't really know what I'm doing here. So we will see how this works. Okay, I'm already seeing here, so I accidentally left one of these little cup holders in here. I forget what they're called. And you can see it is full of green algae water. Yuck. So I'm gonna take this over and dump it in the sink. One thing I'm not really sure of is how I take these apart to clean them while also ensuring that I don't mess up the irrigation tubing. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys what I mean here. So up here is where the irrigation tubing ends, and when you twist off each of these, the tubing is going to be connected down throughout. Of course, that's how the plants are watered. Okay, so it does look like I can just pop off this top here, and thinking it over more, I am going to remove the irrigation tubing because even though it'll be a bigger hassle to put back together, I think it will be easier for me to get a good clean. So I can just completely take apart all of these pieces, including this little top piece that houses the very top of the irrigation tube. And we'll see how that works. Now we're gonna do tube number 2, which is filthy. Might be even more filthy. Ugh, who knows what I'm gonna find in here. So to clean these individual columns and the tube, I'm using citric acid, a half cup, about a half cup dumped into my sink, and some dish soap. So this is what it looks like with the hottest water I could get from my faucet. Now I'm just gonna dump everything in. And after I let these soak in the solution for a while, most of the gunk had been kind of loosened up or taken off. You can see there's still some nasty spots in some of these. So what I've been doing is just using a little bit of my regular dish soap, squirting it on, and then using my cleaning toothbrush to just quickly scrub out all of the gunk. My toothbrush is like the perfect size to get into all these little nooks and crannies in here. And then to get the bottom right here, I found it's easiest to just put the toothbrush in through the Y-cube hole and brush that way, and then get the front part by going in from the top. And then of course just brush down the inside. And rinse it off, see if there's any glaring spots we missed, give it a quick once over. And then, oh, there's a little spot I missed. And then set it aside to dry. And typically I've just been putting these guys through the dishwasher on the top rack, which has been fine for me. They haven't melted or anything. But some of these had a little bit more tough staining on them, so I put them through the soak too, and then I'm just giving them a quick little brush with my toothbrush. Now the top of the water tank that has all of the pump pieces and some electrical stuff in it, we obviously don't want to submerge this in water. So all I'm going to do to clean this off is just use a damp microfiber cloth and some of this gentle all-purpose cleaner. Now, if you found you're having any algae growth in the bottom of these, where the columns go into, here's how I'm cleaning those out, because I don't want to use a toothbrush. I took a paper towel and I wetted it down, and then I folded it into kind of a column. And then I'm just going to run it through like this. So run it back and forth to clean off the inside of that column and pull it out. Worked pretty well. Now that everything is clean and dry, I have put together 2 of the columns. I'm gonna show you a couple tips for putting these back together, because I did have to try a couple different approaches before I was able to get the irrigation tube to be stretchy and long and taut enough to reach all the way to the top. So here is what I did. So the very first thing you'll want to do is thread the irrigation tube through the bottom piece in the column you'll be using, and then put this part onto this part right here. So you have to make sure it's super snug on there, or else the water will not pump up through that little hole and into the irrigation tube. So that is the very first step. And then the second step, of course, is putting column on and making sure that it's tight. So you put it on and then kind of lock it in place. And now pull this, but not super tight, because you don't want to pull it off of that thing in the bottom where the water comes up, but pull it so that it is going straight up through this piece right here. Now, the first time I put this back together, I did so by building the whole column first and then putting the column onto the garden, but we're going to build up instead one by one to ensure that we can pull that irrigation tube up through each of the pieces of the column. So you'll want to thread that irrigation tube up through the bottom of your next column piece, but if you put it through the little hole up here that's farther away from where the tube would go in a straight line up, it's going to take up a little bit of extra space, and then you won't have enough slack at the top to plug the very end of your irrigation tube. So I'll show you what that means here in a second. So I've threaded in the irrigation tube and attached the second column here. And as you can see, when you look in this little hole, the irrigation tube is going pretty much straight up through it. Whereas if I would have threaded it through this hole in the top of the second piece on this column, it would have kind of gone in a diagonal, which would take up a little bit more of the slack. So we're just gonna repeat that process over and over until we build out the whole column. So we'll take a look here. Where would this one lock into place? So I will choose this hole instead of this one for the straighter shot of the irrigation tubing. Okay, just pull it a little tight, but remember, not too tight because you don't want it popping off of that bottom piece where the water's gonna come up. And once you get the tube all the way up through here, you'll see you have just about enough slack to put this little clip piece back on. So this is the piece that plugs the irrigation tube at the top. So when the water comes up, it stops right here and it doesn't have anywhere else to go. So this clips down into here. And then you just want to pull the tubing in like that. Stick it through the top hole here and then plug it. You can see here, it's plugged, so when the water comes up, it won't go anywhere. But if it does happen to go anywhere, there are holes in this, so it'll probably just go back down the tube. And then you put on the cap. Okay, we've got everything reseated here. Remember, when you turn your machine back on to reconnect it, it could take a little bit before your app picks up the device. So don't freak out if it's been a couple minutes and it doesn't reconnect. Mine took about 5 minutes before it would come back online and I could connect it, and now everything's fine. Make sure if you're replacing all of your pods, which you probably are if you're doing a deep clean, that you reset your sow date so Kelby can adjust all the watering and all those good things that you don't have to remember what to do, but you do need to reset your sow date. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful about doing a deep clean on my garden and all the maintenance I did. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. Until next time, happy planting.